Hello everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the Just Chatting Gaming news and trailers for February 23rd. We actually have a bunch of news stories and really only one trailer, and the one trailer is going to be a review for Elden Ring. Speaking of Elden Ring, let's start out with that. For those who didn't see the news today, the embargo lifted for Elden Ring, and we got the reviews. And ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at one of the highest reviewed games of all time. Currently in the mid to high 90s on both Metacritic and OpenCritic, sitting somewhere around 98, 96. The numbers I'm showing you were from earlier today. But a ton of reviewers giving it 10 out of 10s, 5 out of 5s. And I know at one other time that I looked at it, there were over 100 reviewers that had come in, and it was maintaining that mid to upper 90s review score, which is absolutely insane. But yeah, like I said, once we get into trailers, we're actually going to get into an actual review of the game that I want to kind of watch with you guys, because I've been watching and or reading reviews on this game like all day. So very, very cool. Next story. Steam is actually making some changes to its discount program. Going over a few highlights from this. It is not possible to discount a product more than 90% or less than 10% moving forward. You may not change your price while a promotion is live now or scheduled for in the future. A couple other key points. Discounts cannot be run within 28 days of your prior discount, with the exception of the Steam-wide seasonal events. It is not possible to discount your product for 28 days following a price increase in any currency. So, apparently they've been having a problem with this, and I want to say off the top of my head, only a couple of weeks ago, like XCOM 2, I want to say it was like 95% off or some madness. So I think they're doing this to make sure that they are getting more money out of these companies, rather than these companies just practically giving away their games, which is kind of interesting. But I know a lot of you guys buy games off of Steam, and so I thought I would throw that in because it's definitely an interesting story. Next up, we have two back-to-back stories from Bethesda. Just briefly touching on this, they have a roadmap out for Fallout 76 for this year, so it's good that they're going to be putting a lot more into that game. That's actually a game that I should add to my list to try at some point. I do like the Fallout games, but I'm sure most of you know that when Fallout 76 came out, it was essentially a dumpster fire, and now it is like pretty good, especially now that they've added in like the NPCs and the voice acting and all that fun stuff. So yeah, they're gonna be doing more new stuff throughout the year, so very, very, very cool on them. And then kind of part two on the Bethesda deal, and this is maybe a bit bigger news, that they are actually going to be retiring the Bethesda launcher and just straight up moving everything directly to Steam. So pretty interesting story on that. Switching gears over to some Sony news. They released some new pictures of the PlayStation Vr2, so I thought I would share them here real quick. I've not tried a VR yet. Most of this stuff is a little bit on the higher end, and I don't know, to me, I've thought like it's just not quite there yet. So maybe the PSVR 2 or maybe one of these other new ones that are coming out might actually finally get me into a VR headset. So I don't know. We'll have to see on that. I know a bunch of you guys are Bioware fans. We actually got an update from Bioware today. So this is from the Bioware blog. And this is actually in regards to Dragon Age. Now, if you didn't hear the story back about a week ago, there's an industry insider who apparently got some information saying that Dragon Age is supposed to come out essentially next year, probably in the fall. And so I don't know if this article was in response to that guy coming out with that information or what. Unfortunately, this news is not the best news. And here on the channel, we've had a lot of conversations about, like, what has been happening at Bioware? Why do they continue to lose people? It's like a lot of the talent that made Bioware what it was, that made the great games, like the original Mass Effect and Coder and Dragon Age and that sort of thing, it seems like over about the last year and a half, 2 years, they're all leaving. And so we have Dragon Age, which has already seen major loss in their development. You had Mr. Dragon Age himself, Mark Dare, leave. After that, you had another guy leave who was heading up the project. And now today, again, it has happened again. Christian Daly has left Bioware. What is happening? And so this is going to be essentially the fourth person who was either the lead of that game or in the leadership team that has now left. And they go on to say in this article, if I can find the right line, that currently the game... Oh, yeah, here we go. For the next Dragon Age, we are right in the middle of production, which is a great feeling. So they're saying that they're essentially in the middle of the game. Now, how far do they have to go between the middle and the end? Who knows? But it's still interesting. Again, the Jeff Grubb info saying that this game is coming out at the end of next year. So is it actually going to happen or not? So I don't know. It's so weird. They do mention SOTOR down here at the bottom as it's more like a, oh, by the way, SOTOR led by Keith just released Legacy of the Sith, and we just released an awesome trailer. And then they're like, and of course, we're still working on the next Mass Effect led by Mike Gamble. That next Mass Effect, that game's like 5 years out, so. But I don't know. It's just crazy that all these veterans continue to leave. So I don't know. It's weird. The other thing that came out of the Jeff Grubb statement was that his insider was telling him that the game is actually in very, very good shape. But I seriously doubt that information. Like, in the history of games, like, can anybody name me one game that came out and was super good after you had like 4 leadership changes? All right, shoot, even 2 or 3 leadership changes. Anybody? Because I can't think of one. They all came out like garbage. So I feel like everybody should be extremely concerned about this game. Because I don't know how it's going to be any good. Maybe we'll get lucky. And it will be like an incredible game. But the writing's on the wall, as they say. Next up, I know a bunch of you are looking forward to the Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. This is a game that has been delayed multiple times, but you don't have to worry anymore because the game has officially gone gold. Essentially meaning it's done, and they're printing the discs. I'm sure there will still be a mega, like, day one patch, but at least it's done. So, good for those guys. Put on your medals. And then the final story of the day, and this is another one of these weird ones. So Square Enix is out there saying that Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy did not meet their expectations as far as sales numbers. Now, Square has always been one of these weird companies where it seems like they always overestimate what a game sells, and then when it doesn't sell that, then they're like, we are disappointed. Even though the Guardians of the Galaxy game got incredible reviews won a bunch of Game of the Year awards. Still not good enough for him. It was my Game of the Year, for those who don't know. It was my Game of the Year last year. Absolutely amazing game. And odds are, we may never see another one because of this. They just expected too much, and then they didn't reach their goals. And so now they're like, well, fine then. I guess you guys don't like it. That's all I gotta say. They're like one of the worst companies when it comes to them sales numbers. Because I remember, I want to say it was like the last Tomb Raider game, where they're like, this game, we wanted to sell 20 million units. And then it sold like 8 million or something. And they're like, this is unacceptable. When in, like, a realistic universe, if a game sells 1 million copies, that's like a major accomplishment. Crazy people. Well, let me go ahead and kill the music. And we are going to go ahead and watch one of these Elden Ring reviews. Just so you guys can see what this is all about. And I'll probably pause it as we're going through so I can kind of feed in some of the other stuff that I've heard today. So let's check this out.
In the 87 hours that it took me to beat Elden Ring, I was put through an absolute ringer of emotion. A fair amount of sorrow for the hundreds of thousands of lost EXP stolen by some of the toughest boss encounters From Software has ever conceived. A lot of anger, especially at these assholes. Ooh, I hate these guys. And exhilaration from finally getting through that battle that I had been stuck on for an hour. But more than anything else, I was in near constant awe from the many absolutely jaw-dropping vistas, by the sheer scope of an absolutely...
I think I should go ahead and pause for a second. If there's anybody in chat who doesn't know what this game is, this game comes out on Friday. As I mentioned at the start of the news, it is now one of the best reviewed games of all time. This is an open world RPG, but it's also in the Souls genre, which basically means that it has an action combat system. I know there's a lot of people out there who just don't like the Souls games, but I think you should like reconsider this one because this is pretty different than anything that's been done before. The fact that it's an open world game, and they've pretty much said that when it comes to the Souls genre, it's definitely on the easier side. It's not like a super hard Bloodborne or Sekiro or something like that. But let's get into it.
Enormous world, by the frequently harrowing enemies, and by the way in which Elden Ring nearly always found a way to reward my curiosity with either an interesting encounter, a valuable reward, or something even greater. From Software takes the ball that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild got rolling and runs with it, creating a fascinating and dense open world about freedom and exploration above all else, while also somehow managing to seamlessly weave a full-on Dark Souls game into the middle of it.
So one quick note on that, from what I've heard, apparently the open world in this game is absolutely massive. And it's a game that is completely about exploration. And I don't know if this video is going to get into it or not, but it's the kind of thing where, you know, like SOTOR doesn't do it so much, but like other MMOs where you can like go into a zone and essentially like level, and then once you go to another zone or like a higher zone, you are then like out leveled that zone. So in this game, you can actually do that. So it's one of those things where you can like come across like a boss encounter, and the boss is just utterly destroying you, let's say. You can be like, okay, clearly I just need to get some levels, so I'm going to come back to you when I'm a little bit stronger, and you can do that. So that's pretty cool.
It shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that Elden Ring ended up as one of the most unforgettable gaming experiences I've ever had.
Someone must extinguish thy flame.
To set the stage, all you know from the outset is that you play as a tarnished of no renown, blessed by grace, and are compelled to make the journey to the lands between and become an Elden Lord. What that actually means, how one might go about doing that, and what the deal is with that giant glowing golden tree are all things that you have to discover for yourself. Like other FromSoft games, the grand story is hard to fully digest on a first playthrough, but it's a story that I nonetheless enjoyed trying to piece together for myself. It ended up being the organic side stories that kept me most enthralled rather than the grand overarching plot that credits Game of Thrones' George R.R. Martin as its scenario writer. FromSoft smartly doesn't...
So, let me say that again for those who don't know. George R.R. Martin wrote this game, or helped write this game. So the Game of Thrones guy.
Change much in its approach to these from the Souls games, Bloodborne, or Sekiro. You'll just naturally meet characters as you explore and discover the world and become involved in their problems. There are no exclamation point markers on the map, no waypoints to guide you to them, and these characters don't always flag you down or initially want or need anything from you.
So let me go ahead and stop there for a second on the map, because this has actually been something that I've heard a bunch today. If you're one of these people who like old school RPGs, and when I mean that, I'm referring to old school RPGs where you had to have like a notepad on your table and you had to like take notes as you were doing it, they're actually recommending that you do that in this game. Because something that is different about this game compared to a lot of the other ones that have come out is when you pick up a quest, it is not holding your hand saying, okay, go here. Okay, now go over there. All right, now go over there. This game doesn't do that at all. You are able to put your own custom markers on the map. You can see it actually right here. I'm kind of covering it up a little bit. But there's no quest marker system at all. There's also no quest journal. So literally, some of the reviewers were saying, literally the best thing you can do is you have to really pay attention to what they're saying. Like if he says, help me go find my dog or whatever. And you have to like write that stuff down so you don't forget. And then you're like, you go out into the world and you explore and try and find the quest that way. They say it was actually a pretty cool experience from what I've heard. But yeah, very old school in that regard.
Always flag you down or initially want or need anything from you. They're just people with their own agendas and goals, whose stories are impacted based on your own actions or inactions. That was actually kind of refreshing in an open world as vast as this one. And it was always exciting to see a familiar face pop up again later, as I was eager to learn about what brought them to this new part of the world and how their journey had progressed. The trade-off, of course, is that without any markers, quest log, or journal, it becomes very easy to forget about certain plot threads and accidentally leave them unresolved by the end. That's a bummer, and I've already felt regret about missing out on stories that some of my colleagues have had, but for me, it was worth it, because even after 87 hours, I never won.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I've heard quite a bit today. This is one of these games, and I saw a couple people refer to it as like, do you remember back in 2004 jumping into World of Warcraft for the first time? And everybody's like, oh, hey, did you see that cool thing over there? No, I didn't. But did you see this? Oh, no, I didn't. It's going to be one of those games where when this thing launches on Friday, it's going to be like everybody working together to like uncover what this game is about. And even the reviewers were apparently like sharing notes of like, oh, did you find this encounter? Oh, no, I didn't. You know, that sort of stuff. So it's like a big time like exploration and discovery type of deal.
Once felt the open world fatigue that usually sets in when my brain gets overloaded by a map absolutely full of unresolved side quest markers. Besides, any missed quests give me extra incentive to continue onto New Game Plus. Freedom is the word that every aspect of Elden Ring's design connects back to. From the moment you set foot in Limgrave, the first of many interconnected regions of the Lands Between, you are completely free to go wherever you want. And sure, that's far from a new concept in an open world game, but the way it's handled here is truly extraordinary. If you wanted to, you can be an explorer and spend hours upon hours in just Limgrave, delving into every mini-dungeon, fighting every boss, discovering every NPC, and leveling yourself up to better prepare for what's next. Alternatively, you could follow the Light of Grace, guiding you toward the main path and the first major dungeon. Or you could find a hidden path to a new region that's meant for higher levels and completely bypass the first major dungeon entirely. Maybe even steal yourself a cool weapon early while you're there. Again, this is not unprecedented, but a few things set Elden Ring apart from games like Skyrim that provide a similar openness. For one, Elden Ring doesn't scale enemy levels to your own at all, so jumping into a later region means you're always dealing with stronger enemies, making the risk-reward prospect of doing so very real. But perhaps more notably, the way its different areas are connected makes finding these new ones more than a simple matter of choosing a direction and heading towards it. Limgrave is designed very specifically with a main path in mind that takes you through Stormvale Castle, and finding a way around that feels like you've truly discovered a hidden passage or alternate route, which is a super cool feeling not present in most open world games I've explored. You also have more freedom in how you approach combat than any previous FromSoft game, thanks to a bunch of familiar new systems that are used in interesting ways here. You can crouch walk and use stealth to avoid detection, or more easily sneak up for a backstab. You can fight on horseback, you can craft items on the fly, you can summon a huge variety of creatures to fight for you, and most substantially, you can equip Ashes of War to your weapons and completely change their affinity and skill. The most important element of Elden Ring's philosophy, though, is the freedom to just walk away and do something else when you hit a wall. Elden Ring is hard, which is to be expected from a FromSoft game. But its difficulty surprised me, even as a veteran of the Souls-like genre. I hit multiple points, even all the way up to the moment I reached the very last boss, where I had unlocked paths to several bosses and simply could not make headway on any of them. But even though I hit dead ends on those paths, there was always somewhere else I can go. A region I hadn't thoroughly explored, an NPC quest that I had set aside for later, a Light of Grace indicator that I had not yet followed. There was never a point in Elden Ring where I was at a complete loss of what to do, and every time I explored those other regions and followed those alternate paths, I would find new gear and items, level up my stats, or learn new spells or skills that would eventually give me the extra edge I needed to power through a boss that had given me problems. It isn't just the promise of making my numbers go up that called me to turn over every stone on the map. The Lands Between is positively brimming with riches, intrigue, and danger at every turn. Much of what Elden Ring's open world does well can be traced directly back to things that made Breath of the Wild stand out from the many open world games that came before it. It's that same feeling of starting out in a world with little explicit guidance, finding
cool that you can do
something that
mounted
piques your
combat.
curiosity on your own, doing whatever it takes to get there, and then being rewarded for that curiosity. The big difference is that in Breath of the Wild, I could usually predict what's going to happen when I get to that orange glowy thing off in the distance. I'll do a puzzle, unearth a shrine, do another puzzle, and probably get a cool temporary weapon and spirit orb. That's not to take anything away from Breath of the Wild, it was awesome, but that pattern became somewhat routine by the end. In Elden Ring, by contrast, very rarely did my predictions ever come true. I'd head to a lake and all of a sudden get ambushed by a dragon.
That's pretty cool.
Follow a river expecting to collect some minor crafting materials, only to find a dungeon filled with enemies and traps. Enter a cave and get jumped by little goblin men. Or take a seemingly unimposing elevator and find that it just keeps going down further and further and further until, well, you'll have to get there yourself to find out. Best of all, each of these little excursions rewards your curiosity with something worthwhile. That could be a new weapon, a new Ash of War, a valuable consumable, a new creature for you to summon, a new spell, or a new NPC to talk to. There are so many valuable rewards available that I never felt disappointed by my prize, regardless of the amount of effort it took. But the thing that's most impressive about Elden Ring is that in between all of this brilliant open world design, there are a handful of legacy dungeons that still deliver those wide linear levels that Souls fans have come to expect. These are gigantic castles, forts, manors, underground labyrinths, and more that are packed with secret areas, challenging bosses, and multiple paths that are linked by one-way shortcut doors. If they were all strung together without being tied to an open world, they could probably exist on their own as Dark Souls 4. Bottom line, Elden Ring's open world exploration is a new benchmark. It's constantly exciting, rewarding, and full of moments that made me go holy shit in a host of different ways. As far as combat goes, Elden Ring is certainly closest to Dark Souls 3 when compared to other games in From Software's library of action RPGs characterized by weighty attacks, careful stamina management, and a bit of a slower pace than games like Bloodborne and Sekiro. The two big new additions are the ability to use a guard counter by blocking an attack with your shield and then immediately pressing the strong attack button to follow up with a crushing strike that can leave weaker enemies in a crumpled state, and a jump attack that gives melee wielders a new type of heavy attack that
good
can
to see that
also
there's
be used to stun
iframes
enemies
during the
and leave them
animations.
open for a critical hit. They're both great additions that offer melee classes fun new tools, but for the most part, From Software has certainly adopted a if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach. What really makes the combat in Elden Ring so good, though, is its enemy design and variety. Not only are a fair number of them horrifying, but some of these baddies are absolutely vicious, coming at you with wild swings and combos that seemingly go on forever and can hit from 10 feet away. Yeah, like that. And he's still going. Others are more methodical and hide behind their shields to wait for the right opportunity to either parry you or catch you while you're winding up. Others still are weak, but can be huge threats when they ambush you with a grab that kills you in one hit. Many are designed to punish those who just mash the dodge roll button without care, which makes Elden Ring a very hard game. But it's a good style of difficulty. One that's less about fast reaction speeds and twitch reflexes, though those certainly help, and more about learning, adapting, and finding the planted weaknesses in enemy attack patterns. Deciphering those tells and acting upon each moment of opportunity is a large part of why these games are so much fun. And then there are the bosses. I don't want to spoil them, but there are a handful that are some of the most visually and mechanically impressive From Software has ever crafted. It is no exaggeration to say that Elden Ring is From Software's largest and most ambitious game yet, and that ambition has more than paid off. Even after 87 hours of blood, sweat, and tears that included some of the most challenging fights I've ever fought, and innumerable surprises, there are still bosses that I left on the table, secrets that I've yet to uncover, side quests that I missed out on, tons of weapons, spells, and skills I've never used. And this is all on top of PvP and cooperative play that I've barely been able to scratch the surface of. Throughout it all, while the fundamentals of combat haven't changed much from what we've seen before, the enormous variety of viciously designed enemies and the brutal but surmountable bosses have brought its battles to a new level. Even with all the threads I didn't manage to tug on my first playthrough, of which I'm sure there will be several, what I was treated to can easily be held among the best open world games I've ever played. Like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild before it, Elden Ring is one that we'll be looking back to as a game that moved the genre forward.
Very cool.
For more Elden Ring, make sure to check out the first minutes of the game. And for everything else, keep it here on IGN.
Yeah, that game looks absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to jump into it myself. For those who are watching on YouTube, we'll call the video right there. So thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.